Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the GreenSpaNetwork webinar series. Please let us know you're here by chatting in the side chat. Let us know your name and where you're from and where you're working. That'd be really great. We're gonna take questions at the end of this webinar, so feel free to submit them in the chat and we'll attend them at the end. I'm Megan Leffler, GSN's Community Manager, and we have Jessica Gilden here joining us. She is our Business Manager. Hi, Jess. Today we are thrilled to have EcoChi joining us to talk about the natural synergies between Feng Shui and sustainability. We have EcoChi founder and president, Debra and Duneier. Hi, Debra.
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
And vice president, designer, and project manager, Denise Puzzulo. Hi, Denise.
Hi, everyone.
So Debra and EcoChi has been a longtime supporter of GSN and many other green sustainable initiatives. She is also a Feng Shui practitioner, a lead certified associate, sorry about that. She is certified in eco design. She's a graduate gemologist and is widely considered a thought leader in sustainable design and people-friendly environments. So she does everything. So we're very happy to have you here. So welcome aboard, ladies. I think we're ready to get started. So attendees, feel free again to let us know you're here and type your questions in the sidebar.
Okay.
EcoChi, designing the human experience. So welcome to what I usually say is welcome to my head and what goes on in the creation of EcoChi. In the next slide, we will show you what happened when we were creating our website, and we started to dissect EcoChi and what exactly does it mean. We often get people saying EcoChi, echo, and all kinds of pronouncements. But this kind of breaks it down. Eco, meaning eco-friendly. Chi, the vital flow of energy for a better life and a better planet. And when we say vital flow of energy, I would just like everybody to kind of think about the English language and the fact that we do not have a one word to describe what energy or the flow of energy and this vital life force is all about, where in other languages they do. EcoChi is a unique design approach that combines green and sustainable practices, wellness studies, and spiritual design philosophies attained from various cultures. Keep that in mind as we go along. So we have here the three core principles of EcoChi. And this all came about because we needed to make it as simple as possible when I created this design process to explain it to people. It was now about 11, 12 years ago. Most people didn't know anything about green and sustainability. And certainly spiritual design practices used in design kind of threw everybody off. So to make it really, really simple, sustainable practices, environmental psychology, which covers everything from color studies to how people feel in environments and why, to classical Feng Shui. I am a Feng Shui master, and under Feng Shui we also bring in the other spiritual practices like Mayan cultures, Vatsu Veda of India, Native American Indian practices. And these are all things that are brought into a project according to the project and the needs of that project. So this is the first indoor living green wall that was designed in Harlem. We conceptualized this idea for many reasons. I have to admit that this is one of Denise's favorite slides.
Beautiful.
Thank you. In Eastern philosophy, it is believed that our lives and nature are inseparable from each other. But when we come to the Western world, we kind of forget those things, and that our well-being and the well-being of the planet, it's like one breath in and one breath out. It goes all together. It's holistic. We can't separate it.
Yeah.
And so when we're in the indoor environment, it becomes vital to bring the outdoors in for us to have a feeling of well-being. In this project in Harlem, we created this green living wall for so many reasons. There were layers. One was the Feng Shui. This was on an eastern wall, which is wood energy. The CEO of the company was of an eastern energy or wood energy, so it supported her in this environment. There were the sustainability reasons to improve the air quality. As green walls and green plants will naturally filter the air, but also balancing humidity, absorbing sound. There were just so many reasons. Denise, what did I forget? On your favorite
Wayfinding. Yes, this is my favorite part. I think, you know, when we go over our core principles, that's where Debra and I really start, and where we work together on is developing our process so that it's almost like a checklist for us. A lot of the concepts here are a little bit intangible. You know, how do you think about energy and elements and bring them in and see it all the way through to implementation? And so for this, it's one of my favorites because it touches on all of the core principles for us, and then it really did solve a problem for the client here in terms of wayfinding. So coming off of the elevator, reception was a little bit distant from that initial entrance, and the curve of this wall really guides you to reception. And so it also helps employees here for this office not having to get up and, you know, every time they hear the elevator, get up and go greet someone. It guided them, you know, people in upon their visit and led them right to where they needed to be. So we look at the elements first, but then we're also taking into consideration all these different factors for each project and really customizing it to fit the needs of the space, and so that it really ends up helping people. So that's why it is my favorite. This is another great example about our process and a little bit about how we work. So we really are balancing art and science. And we have worked on, and my passion really here is finding ways to visually represent these things that not everyone is familiar with, like energy and the elements. And so we do start with, and you get a little teaser of it here, but a compass reading to figure out what energies are needed for each individual space. And then we end up applying it, you know, in very different ways. And so here we were able to work with an artist, look at what she does and the work she usually produces, which was usually in a small frame, and say, okay, for this space, we kind of need a wow feature. And how cool would it be to blow this art up and insert it into glass panels so that when you're in the conference room, you feel like you're kind of in nature, in this element. And so, I mean, we have slides later kind of describing each element and the way they can be brought in. But for here to see the sacred geometry blown up and be able to experience it at a larger scale, and then also to be able to kind of have this fire element and coming to a point in the glass was a really cool interpretation and something a little different than what you might do for another project.
Yeah.
Just one more thing on this. So Denise mentions the energy, and this can be done in pattern as well as color, shape, art. And here we have it in sacred geometry, which we're going to talk a little bit about later. But basically, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it is the geometry of life. It is the mathematics of life. And we see it here visually, very clearly, in these beautiful leaves, magnified in a way where you can see the proportions repeating themselves, and these proportions will repeat themselves throughout, just throughout time. It just never stops. These are called fractals. And the other thing is that this was a solution for a CEO, and this area fell into the fire area. It needed fire. Mm-hmm. So just knowing the atmosphere, the kinds of decisions that were going to be made in this boardroom, it wasn't appropriate to make this red. The other thing is, if we made it red, the CEO was this wood energy, and the fire would kind of burn it down. So it would kind of neutralize any energetic work that we had already accomplished in the office. The CEO did say to me that I love this idea, I love this art. I think it is so amazing that people will be sitting around this table making big decisions, but they will always have a feeling that there is something bigger than what they're doing.
That's beautiful.
So as Debra mentioned, each element for us has a different way of representing it in terms of shape, color, and material. And so for us, every space has a life of its own. There aren't generalized rules that we can just apply. We have to take into consideration where it's located and then figure out from there, if it needs a certain energy, how are we going to do that? And for us, there are many different ways of looking at it and many different solutions that we can apply to the space.
So for this project, this room, obviously no window, and we created this park-like atmosphere, bringing in earth elements that were needed, as well as wood energy. So you have both of those going on in one room, and we're working on a project right now where we just found out there were 5 different energies running through the same space. And how to address all of that is really a mind teaser and a puzzle that we love to solve. This room also is sustainable, completely sustainable. So everything that was used in this room, the wood was certified, also came from Brazil, where there were artisans there hand carving it. The materials are all low toxins, eco fabrics. And the wall that you see in the back was a photograph that we had duplicated into wallpaper. And then the column was curved. Yeah, we had the architect do that. It was your basic square column, but that can cause Feng Shui problems because it interferes with the flow of the energy. The 5 elements. We get so many questions about this. I'm just going to read this paragraph because we created this, because it really has kind of the soul of why this is all so important. Just as nature goes through cycles of change, so do we. We are the seasons, we are nature, and we are the elements. In Feng Shui, the 5 elements are earth, metal, water, wood, and fire. These elements are symbolic of the forces at work within the universe and how these forces impact our minds and bodies, as well as how they affect other living creatures. The 5-element theory is also the basis of traditional Chinese medicine, Qigong practices for energy and healing, and acupuncture-based therapy, which I'm sure many of our audience are very familiar with. So I call Feng Shui acupuncture for spaces. Here are the 5 elements, and we're going to show you on the next slide how we use this in design and how we think about it. If you look at the images next to each element, this represents architecture that would be really speaking the energy of. And my favorite one is really water in this slide because it shows you a skyline. And this skyline has no pattern whatsoever. It is the best way of describing water, as many people will think of it as just as waves, but a wavy pattern may or may not be a water element, but certainly one that has no pattern and is irregular will. Also next to these illustrations, you will see next to that actually, you know, FF&E or FF&A, the fixtures and the materials and the products that we would choose when thinking about bringing in the element that's in that line, as well as the colors next to that and the basic shapes that represent each element. And this will also become clearer as you see. We're going to show you 3 projects.
So a lot of what we've been working on is really using that as criteria. And what's fun in design is a lot of those don't end up being very restrictive, but instead kind of expand your ability to come up with solutions for different projects. So for this project in particular, we were able to do a design for the Global Wellness Summit at the Breakers in Palm Beach, Florida in 2017. So this, you'll get an idea of some of the visuals we use during our design process and how it gets implemented into a real project. And for this, it was a temporary space. So a lot of fun to work on. So we use the design process to kind of guide us along and be able to work with a team on things. But we kind of look at it in a different way in terms of what we need to know in order to do our work with energy. So here we have site assessment for the Breakers in Palm Beach. And we take a look at it kind of from a bird's eye view. We look at what's going around surrounding the site, and then what's gonna come into play as factors throughout, for this, the event that was happening over the course of several days for invited delegates in the wellness industry. And all of this becomes part of the story that we develop in order to come up with solutions for the space. Something unique about this project was that the initial location was actually a little bit further down the coastline when it was first developed. And then the owner, guests staying at the resort, actually would request to be able to stay a little bit closer to what they nicknamed the breakers, which was where the waves would crash onto the shoreline. And that's where they were drawn to. And so the owner responded directly to what people were asking for and what they liked, and ended up moving future locations closer to that where guests wanted to be, and then renaming it the Breakers. So what we loved about this is that it was something that felt good to people, a good experience, and a solution was directly, you know, responding to that, where people were drawn to just based on nature. So that became something really important for us that we wanted to capitalize on, the good energy of this space.
Some really interesting things happen when we take a look at where the property is actually situated. Sometimes there are shapes that come through. We were working once on a student center when we took a look at the broad view of that, you know, kind of Google Earthed it, and it was pretty amazing, the kinds of things that we saw. And that became part of the branding and part of what the design concept actually became while we were working. We had, I think, 6 designers working at the time, and it kind of blew people's minds. So the shapes do matter, where it's located does matter, and that all influences what kinds of elements and energies we're going to want to bring in so that the experience is optimized in that area.
Yeah, and I think we've come into projects at various points of the process. We've come in, you know, when they are implementing, but for us, we can really start, you know, from here, just site selection and looking at where, you know, either the project is or the building is, whatever it is, but this is where we start no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And we also take a look at the site's history and story. And, you know, this could have a lot of different elements to it, but there's always certain things that stand out to us when we're looking into the background of a project in a building. For this particular project, there were 2 fires in this location that they rebuilt afterwards. And so that was something we really wanted to be sensitive to and dealing with, that a lot of delegates would be in these meeting spaces for long periods of time. And the fact that it had this history, we wanted to be aware of that and bring in as much as we could to kind of mitigate or find solutions for a history that had these events in its past.
I have to say that there are also certain things during the process that become big ahas, things that are unexpected to us. And, you know, maybe we'll get a chance later to talk about also results that were big ahas. And you know, we go in with authenticity and science and evidence-based studies and ancient wisdoms. And we go in to do the very best for people and planet that we possibly can. And when when the project is done, we get calls and letters and all kinds of things about what has happened after. So one of the ahas here was, it's one of those things like, you know, you just can't even really believe, you know, did this really happen? But Denise was upstairs working on this site history. We were there on site, and we were just about to go for a tour of the spaces where the summit was going to be. And we walked in to the ballroom, and all of a sudden I started to say, does anybody smell that? Does anybody feel that? What, you know, and Denise is looking at me, what, you know, and everybody's like, what are you talking about? And it's like, I smell fire. Do you smell fire? And it's like, no. And then Denise takes me aside and said, throughout history, there were 2 fires there.
Wow.
So it's pretty, you know, it's just pretty amazing. And we'll point out a few other ahas as we go along.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like these concepts and even thinking about an experience of a space can be something that people think of in a very, you know, it's a very intuitive thing, but it's so important in design to, you know, try and figure out how can we optimize experience as much as we can. And so, I mean, this really is how we do it. We take it step by step and go through our process, and that's how we get these outcomes. And we take everything into consideration, even how you feel when you walk into the site is something we end up, you know, taking note of and bringing back to in the end of our process. And we also take a look at, especially for this being an event, branding or any digital marketing. For us, this is about the whole experience. And for delegates for the Global Wellness Summit, they were experiencing the summit before they even made the trip there. They were receiving content. And for us, that was important to take into consideration what delegates have already seen before going to the site and making sure that the story that we were continuing for them was only enhancing the experience they were already getting before arrival.
This here is what we call energy mapping. We on site did a compass reading. We use a Lopan compass. Lopan compass is the compass that is used traditionally for Feng Shui. And we're looking at magnetic north opposed to true north because magnetic north is what pulls everything here on Earth. And so that's what we use as our gauge. We do have to place ourselves in very special places. I'm thinking most recently in a new project we were doing that's still under construction in Manhattan. And in that building, we had to find the first elevator in the lobby with hard hats on and stand diagonally with our back to the doors. So this is all pretty fun, I have to say, but it's really, really interesting to see where are these directions, where are they leading us, you know, with the compass. and then setting ourselves up in a very specific way that maybe we'll get into later in order to take the reading. The Global Wellness Summit, one of the ahas were where the summit in the hotel was taking place was in the southern portion. You can see that on the bottom. And yes, in Feng Shui, it's opposite than what we usually see. The Global Wellness Summit found itself in the health sector. Just with all of those other sectors there, Global Wellness Summit took place in the health sector. By accident. It's so cool.
So that was by accident? Wow.
Doesn't always work like that, but
No.
for that one, it was a great find. We also took a look at circulation for the events. Unlike past events, all the meeting places as well as the evening gala were taking place on one site. And so we wanted to be conscious of that and take into consideration where guests would be throughout the duration of the event, and where maybe a new place they would be could kind of create a new experience for them. So in doing this, we also created, or were able to create, a 5-element design for the evening gala, and this was in the Breakers Venetian Ballroom. So Debra showed us that we took a compass reading of the site as a whole. For this project, we also took a compass reading for the Venetian Ballroom itself. This was a specific event that was going to feel different for delegates, so we wanted to be conscious of the energies not only occurring on the site as a whole, but in that particular room itself.
So
we did the compass reading here,
Yeah, this is the compass reading for the Venetian. And I think just a little a green side note, one of the challenges of this event was that it was being held during turtle mating season. And that meant that these beautiful ocean views that were part of this beautiful ballroom were not going to be able to be seen because no lights are allowed to use during the turtle mating season because it confuses them and they don't know how to find the water if you do that. And so this begins the story of, how do you take a room that now becomes just 4 plain walls and create an immersive experience. Here's the energy analysis that I did of the Venetian room, and taking a look at all of the elements. There are always going to be 4 areas that are auspicious and 4 that are inauspicious or bad luck, and never anything to worry about because that's what we're here for. It's in order to balance those, all of those energies, and take what may not be auspicious and change it through texture, design, patterns, and shapes. Art also.
So we also used a series for this project of inspiration photos. We knew what elements we wanted to bring into the space. And I think a lot of times, and actually we did get this comment on this project when we said we were doing a 5-element design for the gala. People said, oh great, this corner there's going to be a fire feature, and in this there's going to be a water fountain, and there'll be metal, the material here. And for us, the elements aren't, spelled out that literally. They're, as we mentioned before, they're shape, color, and form. And so in combination with coming up with a design concept for the gala, we had specific shapes and features in mind for the room. And so by using images and visuals, it was just our way of kind of developing that for this project and seeing where we could bring in the elements in kind of an unexpected way, not so literal. As Debra mentioned, we were there during turtle season. So one of the ways we kind of looked at this room in a different way, because the main feature of this ballroom was an entire wall of windows looking out onto the ocean view. And that was a wow moment every time you walked into the ballroom. For us, the gala took place during the evening. So this kind of turned into a black wall. And we really wanted people to feel a connection to nature outdoors, to feel that they were being transported somewhere else. And this idea of having a star curtain and kind of mimicking fireflies in nature was important to us. And so when we were working with the design implementation team, we said, what if the whole room is really immersed in this concept and covered with the star curtain so you feel you are in a different place? And with this team, we were able to do that. So it was just, you know, great for us to work through the design solutions and come up with this, this feature.
So this is a 3D rendering using the inspiration that we found in all of the work that was done to prepare the design for this. And this is a way of us showing this is the concept. This is what I called Denise on the phone early in the morning, and I said, I saw it, I have it. This is what the room is going to look like. And of course, this is before we know about budget, what's really available and things like that. But it's really interesting to take a look at the initial, and I always say you have to be in love with the process when you do this work, is where we started, where we wind up, and actually what the night of the event looks like. And we're going to show that to you now. So all of those elements incorporated in the way that it could be done there. Most of the sustainable aspects of this night, we were very, very lucky to be working with the Breakers, who has a sustainability policy that is this thick guide. We used their vendors in order to source what we were going to use. So we know that everything has been used before and will be used again. I think they also have a policy with the food, if I'm not mistaken, that whatever was not eaten was then donated that night.
So we have another example here, which is implementing our process really in a workplace and creating workplace wellness and what that looks like from start to finish. And so for here, color palette definitely played an important role as part of our concept. And something unique about this space was that we were working with all 5 elements at once. But we did have a sense of what we wanted to be primary and most prevalent throughout the space. And so those elements, our primary elements that we're working with, were water and metal. And then secondary elements, what we wanted to bring through in accessories or specific areas, were fire, wood, and earth. And so this is kind of our translation. We're dealing with the elements and a concept and how we translate it into picking materials for a space and what that looks like. And as you can see here, the colors also came from a gemstone inspiration, and we use those to kind of pick out pigments to use throughout the process.
So we have a mood board here. We take our clients through a process where we really get to know them. One of the first things we do is show them a slide presentation of similar properties and projects from around the world. And we show them extremes. And that is a way for us to get to know what their likes and dislikes are. So for this particular area, they wanted to bring in a masculine and feminine kind of a feel in the design. And we did that by using the primary elements for the design. And this was the result of what we were able to show them for that. Right here is the existing layout of the reception area that we were working with. And the area, if you could show where the entrance was, Denise. Thank you so much. Yes, so that was the entrance. In Feng Shui, it is very important to have the Ming Tang, which is the entrance, where the transition is from one kind of energy to another as you're walking into a new place, so walking inside from the outside. Very important for you to have a direct communication with that space, where that space tells you this is where you are. And that was missing from this area. There was no place for signage here. Mm. This is the recommended layout. Keep in mind, you can see on top it says option 3. We show a variety of options that will work. And then we go with what, you know, we then express what our recommended layout is and why. And of course, it's always up to the client. Each one would work. So sometimes it's a combination of 1 or 2 of them put together.
We also end up showing that really what we're picking out, and this is a lot of the reason why we call it purposeful design, is because when we're choosing items to go into a space, there is a story behind each item. And so this is a good example of the way that we work is we're actually keeping kind of this mini guide next to us constantly to refer back to the elements and figuring out, okay, this space needed this element, how are we going to bring that in? And it's almost like a check system for us as we're going through. And so when we're picking pieces, and it's something too that makes sure that each piece has a story behind it and that people can have a connection to it when they come in. We're never going to just arbitrarily put something there to fill space. We're always trying to find something that ties back to the concept and ties back to the story of, even in this case, the company and what their branding was and what they wanted out of this space. And so this is what we were able to show to them and really go through the implementation process for each piece and put it into their space so they could see it. And we also we did another view here, and as Debra mentioned, this was their entrance space that we really wanted to set the tone for the rest of the office space for them. And one of the ways we did that was by bringing in a waterfall wall feature. Not only did this kind of bring in a larger presence for reception, but it also solved an energy chore for the space. And so, yeah, so the water element here was something special we were able to do and actually bring in a water feature.
This is the 3D rendering of the Mass Mutual project, the reception area, also bringing in the masculine and the feminine together in one place, as well as all of the elements that were needed. Notice that an area was created for signage, so that is opposite the entrance to the space, so at all times you know where you are. We also put in a water element behind the desk, the reception desk. It also needed water energy, and in businesses, water is often what we use to show and encourage abundance and prosperity. Designing the treatment room, we're going to bring you to the spa world now in Georgia at the Serenbe community, where there is going to be a new spa. The design has not been implemented yet, but worked with my favorite people there, Greg and Amanda, and I'm sure many of you know them. And it was a really, really great pleasure to work with people of such high consciousness and so open to not only sustainability, but the Feng Shui and the historical significance of their project.
So here is the existing layout of the treatment room that we were working within. And for this space, it's really an intimate setting and one where treatments would be occurring. So we were dealing with certain fixtures that were going to remain in the space, and we definitely wanted to be conscious of that. And then we wanted to take a look at it and maybe see it in a new way where we can optimize the amount of treatments that were able to happen in the space. So when we took a look at a recommended layout, we wanted to try and expand this area to include an individual sauna. And so when we're looking at different solutions, we're trying to find the ones that maybe fit the situation the best, and then also optimize the space as much as we can. But we like the fact that this was an intimate setting, and it really opened up kind of special opportunities for this space in particular.
I think the other thing that it started to, for a small, I mean, and keep this in mind for those of you who are spa consultants or working in smaller spas, that there are opportunities to sell more services in a small space. It's all about planning and designing the space sometimes so that it can do more than one thing. So here we have the some of the space planning and the elevations to give you an idea of some of the fixtures we were thinking of, some of the effects that we thought were important, all the time addressing sustainability, environmental psychology. You would be surprised about how many people, when they're going in for a massage or a treatment, are anxious. So how do you use the elements and environmental psychology to kind of calm them down, make them feel safe, and make them feel secure? And small spaces very often help. And this is the final rendering. You can see where the sauna was added in the bathroom. We had also some equipment that had to be in this room, and we came up with a design that I think Greg and Amanda were very, very happy with, and I think that their clients that are taking a look at this now and getting ready to use this space for treatments are really looking forward to this kind of an atmosphere, kind of safe, calm, authentic, not overdone, not overpowering, just a place that feels cozy and a place you'd like to be.
In addition to working with certain elements from the start, we've also had a couple of projects where sacred geometry was able to play a large role in our figuring out layout for a space. And so for this, we were doing a relaxation room for a spa that had a view to the outdoors. And so this geometry of the speed of life became something very important to us throughout the process. And we were able to incorporate it so that the elements on the interior and arrangement of the lounge chairs in the relaxation area mimicked the landscape design that was occurring and the view they were looking out onto the property. So sacred geometry plays a role in various ways, but in this one it was kind of a special way to lay out the space and think about things in a different way.
And I'd like to say that the reason why, and this shows you a rendering of a realistic rendering of the space when it was laid out this way. And why is it so important to take a look at this? And you know, it really, when I learned about sacred geometry and I studied it, it really made me think, if this is the mathematics of life, and in design, we are working with measurements and layouts. If we laid out a space or created a building using sacred geometry, what would that feel like for the people that spend time in there? It would feel like home, because we are now in a space that is actually built, created, laid out in the same mathematics as our own DNA. Has to feel like home.
Mm-hmm.
I think what was also special about this is the way that sacred geometry then was layered in with the elements needed for this space. So the view here was out onto the red rock, something a very dry environment. And so the elements needed inside the space were a lot cooler. And a lot of the lighter tones and curves used in the space were done intentionally to counter that. And so that was another reason why the specific geometry was chosen, is because of the flow of it and the pattern that really worked and complemented the elements that were needed in the space.
Oh, here we are. So hopefully you're finding this as interesting as the press does. And I have to say that when I first created EcoChi, we were embraced by the press immediately. People fell in love with the concept of a better life for people and a better planet through design. And the fact that this could just impact our lives in such a profound way. And to this day, it's the same. Really, really embraced. I had someone come to me and say, you know, if I went into a spa and I saw EcoChi on the wall, I would be able to take a deep breath and relax, because I will know that everything was thought of. And that's where purposeful design comes in. When we call it purposeful design, there is nothing that is done through our process that doesn't have a purpose. There's never a blank wall that just gets filled. There's always a reason.
And I think a lot of the concepts and principles we're dealing with are still, again, they're new. I mean, green and sustainability was new, and people have to find a way to incorporate that into design. And I think that's something we still do on our projects each and every time, is to build upon finding ways to incorporate energy, experience, you know, these things that are more based on feeling, and figure out ways to incorporate them into design so that there is a product, there's an outcome, a space that people enjoy being in.
This is an alternative workspace that we created for people that were really in a pit. There were probably about 60 desks all lined up together, and only addressing almost like an old-fashioned way of working. And we created this alternative space so that people of all generations, of all work styles, would be able to pick up their laptop or their iPad and come to a place where they could put their feet up on the coffee table and their laptop in their lap and do some work in a different environment in the office. And that is the end of our presentation, and I think we're going to address some questions.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yes. Thank you so much. And everything you guys do is just beautiful. And I love how everything has a purpose. I mean, you could just go into a space and just relax, knowing that, you know, it's all thought of for you, and you could just relax and feel like you're safe. Can you come into my house? Please.
Certainly.
So I think that you addressed some questions. Thank you, Deborah, on the side of people asking questions.
Yes.
Jessica.
Trying.
Yeah. Double tasking. It's pretty good. Jess, she has some questions she's going to address from people that submitted. Jess, you want to ask those?
Absolutely. So what are the top 3 things we can do to improve the Feng Shui well-being in our homes?
Okay, so I did take a few notes kind of anticipating this, so if you don't mind me looking down for a second. I'm trying to think of the easiest things to kind of implement without having to have a compass reading or any of that. And those things are usually based on what's called form school. And form school is the most basic Feng Shui that applies to every school of Feng Shui. So one of the things would be to bring life force in to the indoors. Now that can mean plants, that can mean have a pet, some fish in a fish bowl or something like that. But life force in the home is very important. It keeps the chi flowing. It keeps you close to nature. Brings the outdoors in. There's the biophilia thing going on. There's environmental psychology. There's the sustainability part of it. It all works together, but you have to bring life force into the home. Another thing is to unclutter your space. Nothing blocks chi than a whole bunch of stuff that really should be donated or thrown out to make room for new things to come into your life. There is a school of Feng Shui, or a school of thought in Feng Shui, that how your home is set up is actually a reflection of what your own internal health is. So if you have a bunch of clutter, it is believed that your veins, your body is clogged up, and to free it, you need to kind of get rid of that stuff. So I created a system at around the time I was writing my book called Stay, Maybe, Go. So start with one drawer and make 3 piles with what's in that drawer. Stay, maybe, and go. And if you're going to do this over, let's say over the holidays or something, you know, after the celebrations are over and you need to kind of like get ready for the new year, you find if you do this for a little while, you know, a day, you spend a day doing it, that you start putting things in the maybe pile, and all of a sudden they start going to the go pile. Before you know it, it's like, what's with the maybe? Let's get rid of it. And before you know it, you're making room for new and fresh things to come into your life. Also keep in mind that what you see is what you get. That's great belief in Feng Shui. So what you look at is what you're bringing into your life. So if you have art in your home and you're looking like across from your bed, there's a picture, something up on the wall, and it's a person standing alone, and everything you want in your life is all about getting married and starting a family. But what you look at is some person by themselves. That's what you're bringing into your life. It's the first thing you're looking at in the morning, the last thing you're looking at night, and you're certainly bringing that in. So I would say find inspiration, things that look like the future you want to have, and place that in your home.
That's super valuable. I mean, we could take that tomorrow and just, I have clutter, I'm moving right now, but I feel like I've been getting rid of clutter for 5 years and it's still there. It's my goal. I definitely am more stressed when there's just more in the way. So my ultimate goal is to look like your background.
Right.
White.
I was gonna say, I know how I'll be spending my holidays.
Well, first have a great time.
Yeah.
Then get rid of the stuff, making room for more great times to come in.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Well, so we talked about the home. Now, can you give some tips for incorporating Feng Shui into businesses and offices?
Absolutely. We did mention, or I did mention earlier, the Ming Tang, which is the entranceway from one area to another. So you saw a really great example as how Mass Mutual, when you walked through that door, there was no signage whatsoever. That Ming Tang just didn't do anything, you know, as far as locating someone and making someone feel secure. I mean, did you ever walk off of an elevator like in a hotel and you see this long hallway, but there you have no idea where you are? Like, am I on the right floor? Am I walking in the right direction? That's very important, is to orient. And the Ming Tang of an office is your chance to tell your story right away. This is who we are by what you choose to put there. Another thing is to have a water feature. Water brings prosperity. So you saw in that other image where there was prosperity, you know, a prosperity water feature on the wall. Water is all about abundance, all about bringing in prosperity. And you're going to notice that when you come to buildings, or taking a look in Hong Kong, you know, images of Hong Kong and how they use that there as well. Another thing is a proper color palette. Now, Denise has showed you a page before from branding from the Global Wellness Summit. Keep in mind that there is a Feng Shui of business logos, types of businesses. So there are colors and energies that actually represent different kinds of businesses. It could be banking and it could be education, and what those logos look like. What is the face to the public? So all of those things have to be chosen properly, as well as your color palettes.
Perfect. Thank you. So you've spoken a lot about water, and we have a couple of folks joining us from the Hot Springs area. So one of the questions that came in was, how can EcoChi work with the waters, and how do the waters work with EcoChi?
Pretty complicated question, but you know, when you think about the literal translation of Feng Shui is wind and water. Water is the life force, the chi, and wind carries it to different places, which is why you don't want a lot of clutter, because it will block the chi from flowing into your house, right? So water, of course, is going to play a very, very important role. It is the force of life. It is the mother of all life, right? So in working in all of our projects, we're always going to be looking at the water energy and being sure to represent that in our projects, but also always considering water itself as a resource, and the fact that this is becoming so scarce. And what kind of toilets do we have in this project? What kind of water faucets do we have? Are we going to take the water and recycle it and use it to, you know, can we take the gray water and possibly use it for landscaping? All of that is looked for. And I think that this is, I think I said before, almost like a breathing exercise. To me, the water is the breath that gives us life. And so being good to ourselves is being good to the water. Being good to the water is being good to ourselves.
That's lovely. Another question, this is from a Hot Springs spa development in Washington State, was how to enjoy indoor and outdoor spaces for each of the 4 seasons.
It's a really interesting question, because I've actually been getting calls and having conversations with spa consultants who are telling me that they're in so many properties, in so many places, there is a direct disconnect between the amazing treatments or the amazing experiences that a place is offering and the indoor space, the place where they're checking in, and the place when they're departing. So this is, you know, this is one experience. So how do you take this amazing practitioner that you have that's giving great services, or this fabulous hot springs, and begin that experience as people come and check in? Mm-hmm. The experience starts there and should not end until they're leaving. And that's done through design. As far as the seasons, the 5 elements are all based on season. You know, you saw that chart before. So it's about taking a compass reading as to where the hot springs are located exactly, doing an analysis of that, and then in each season, changing elements to enhance what needs to be enhanced in that moment in time. Because I don't think we really discussed this in depth, Jessica, but every season has an energy of itself, and every moment in time does. So it's overlapping that with where you are to find out what needs to be enhanced in that moment to create the best experience possible.
Perfect. So can you tell us a little bit about what types of properties the EcoChi purposeful design can be implemented in?
Well, I mean, you've seen 3 of them. We did spa, workplace, and a temporary space, which was brand new for us and nothing that we ever expected to do before. We've even done now a wedding which is just like crazy because, here we are, designing, boutique hotels and we're doing some work in luxury residential buildings, and anyone that's focused on wellness. And hey, we did a restaurant. We did Paul Newman's restaurant. We did the redesign there.
Oh, wow.
And it was a real delicate balance of honoring his work and also honoring the new chef, the new owners, the new family, and being able to do a design where we were able to balance both, because there was no way I was going to destroy what Paul did. He was a pioneer in sustainability. But when that project was over, we got a call from the owner, and he said, they were so happy and the employees were good, and, everything was great, and they were all booked up for the season. And that was just wonderful. And Denise and I looked at each other, we high-fived each other, and job well done, right? Okay. But 2 months later, we got a call from the chef. And he said, Debra, I'm calling because we're very happy and everything's good, and we're booked and, and all the things they said before. He said, but that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling to tell you that people in the community are coming here to heal. They're telling me when they have migraine headaches, when they're stressed out, when they're not feeling well, they come here and they feel better. And I know it's because of your work. Wow. And it's like, it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
So, Debra, you actually have an EcoChi 180-degree seal certification. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what that is and why you created that program?
Yeah, sure. I originally started this certification because, as you know, I'm a LEED accredited, and I would say to a client, this is a perfect project to be LEED, and they would turn around and say, I'm not doing LEED, I'm not having a third-party verifier in here, I'm not hiring a LEED professional, to be on the team, and all of the expense, it's not in the budget, and forget green. And I went, no, don't forget it. Don't forget it. Let's do what we can do. So the EcoChi certification was born because it was a way of creating 18 guidelines of things in the project that were done to make for a better life and a better planet. And under that, not only came the green and sustainable points, but environmental psychology and the ancient wisdoms of design that actually impact how you feel when you're in a space. So we did create the EcoChi 180-degree seal. And Denise helped me work through the process of that. I don't know if you'd like to speak a little bit about that, Denise?
Yeah, I think something that's pretty unique about what we're doing with the guidelines is that it really celebrates what can be done in a space. As Debra mentioned, a lot of people feel they need to, fulfill certain things, and with green and sustainability, and even with experience, and a lot of the things we're dealing with Feng Shui, there's not a 100% solution that can be applied everywhere, that everyone can do. So it really celebrates each project individually and tells the story of what each space is achieving. And it's not only in green and sustainability, it is an experience. And we found that through our process and working directly with the clients, we are keeping that list anyway, because that's part of our documentation. And this is a way to really put that list out there and make it transparent to the users, to the people who are going to be using the space once it is created, to know that these things were kept in mind specifically for them, and to know the story really enhances the experience. A lot of the things we're seeing with design, once you know the background story and that something was chosen for you, it makes that, experiencing that space even more unique and even more special. So that's our work with the guidelines is really a reflection of a work of the process we've developed and the system we've developed, but it's a way of putting it out there so that users know about this and know what was done for them.
That's great. Well, I know I'd love to have you come into my space and work your magic. But can you tell our audience about how they could begin working with EcoChi?
Well, sure. You know, of course, contact us, you know, and we'll chat. But the other thing is, I've been asked by companies and corporations, you know, how do we begin working with you? You know, I found that over time it was hard for them to take that first step because they didn't really understand how to start. So you're asking this question at a time where in 2019 we have created a retainer product where we are going to have 12 people join us, and we will be giving, every other month you will be getting abstracts of articles from all different places, saving you hundreds of hours of reading, but not only in design. And, you know, it'll be from everywhere from the New York Times to Psychology Today. We are going to be kind of on the pulse of everything that's new and coming. And we're very, very excited about that. And we will have 2 meetings a year. Where in person in New York City, we all sit around a boardroom and you sit with the smartest and brightest and most creative people that we could find. And get a chance to kind of, I would call it like brain candy, you know, to really brainstorm and talk about all of the possibilities. And I can't wait to actually introduce that. Along with that, it will come with consulting hours as well as a keynote, and, you know, choices of a keynote, consulting hours, really whatever, much like the EcoChi certification, we want to give you what you need. And so it's kind of, you can pick and choose whatever you need from there. So we're excited about that. But otherwise, just send us a note, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk about whatever your needs are.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Well, we can't thank you both enough for joining us, Debra and Denise, and giving us some takeaways that we can incorporate today, which I'll probably be doing. How can they best reach you? I see you have the website below, email, phone.
Yeah, just go for it. Give me a call.
Okay.
Yeah, a call or an email is fine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. And thank you to our audience for joining us. And feel free to reach out to Debra, Denise, or GSN if you have any questions. And the webinar, the recorded webinar, will be on our YouTube channel this week. So you can watch it again and pause and take notes if you need to do a little replay.
Right.
So thank you again, and happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you. Have a fabulous holiday, everyone. Namaste. Thank
Namaste.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.